Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works, proudly supported by Valvoline and Sparesbox. Don't forget BCW5 on checkout. This week, we're doing something a little bit different. It's been a while since we've done a Q&A. We put the call out on Facebook and on Instagram, and we've got a ton of questions. There's going to be a lot of questions that are answered that haven't been asked before.
This one's from Mr. Tire Man. Did the Cresta get returned to Australia?
For some of you guys who haven't been probably following the socials as much, no, the Cresta hasn't come back. It's actually going to be staying in the US for about 12 months. Officially, it only entered the US about 3.5 weeks ago because the shipping just turned into a total disaster. The boat was late. The company handling the unpack on the US side is absolutely useless. That's nothing to say. So Leighton, who we organised it through in Australia, he went above and beyond. He was chasing them. I was chasing them. The woman we were dealing with on the US side just dropped the ball. And basically, long story short, it took a normal shipping time of about 2 months, about 60 days. This thing blew out to, I think, we're about 85 days by the time the cars got unpacked. The cars are currently in storage in Houston, and you guys will be seeing more on that soon.
Dill Watkins asks, will you be training Team Skid Factory in drag racing?
No, I won't. Alan, Woody are both pretty competent drivers. Happy to answer any of their questions, but we're actually geographically about 1,400 kilometres apart. The guys at Nugget Garage are a lot closer to them, so I guess if there's any technical questions or anything for drag racing, the Nugget Garage guys would definitely be who to speak to. That being said, I'm more than happy to help out if they need my assistance, but they've also got plenty of capable, arguably more capable people than me, much more locally to them. And also Nugget Garage used to own Kevin, the VS Commodore that they're currently building to race me. That may or may not be happening. We don't know what's happening with that yet. My car doesn't even exist yet, so we'll see what happens. Chat's lit.
We haven't forgotten what you did for those in need during the fires. Thank you. Also from Dill Watkins, which car did you used to own that you missed the most and why?
Funny story, actually. The car I probably missed the most was my Subaru Fiore, which I replaced with the Rex. I kind of got over it, is the actual answer. Once I got that Rex, I drove it around for a bit. I did enjoy it for what I was. I did like the car. Didn't give me the same feelings as the original car, so I did miss the original one at the time, but after revisiting it, I realized that in my current position now, that car probably isn't really as useful as what I used to use the old one for. I guess there's days where I miss the Stagia purely because of the enormity of that build and the amount of time it took, the amount of people involved in it. I would say that and the Cresta are probably the two biggest builds that were constantly evolving. But yeah, I guess the actual true answer to that question is I don't actually really miss anything that I've sold.
This one's from Florian Gretzner. They say Rotary stuff.
I'll never rule it out, but it's just very expensive. So even to buy a Rotary powered car, I don't know what the market's like internationally. In Japan, at least, anything Rotary is very expensive, much like it is here. An FDRX7, for example, in Japan, you're probably going to pay high 40s, low 50s in Australian dollars, $45,000 to $55,000 Australian for that car over there. By the time you get it here, you're probably looking at about another $5,000 in cost between shipping, compliance, registration, and that's not factoring in anything that the car actually may need going forward. Potentially I could put a Rotary in something else. I don't really have a car or a project in mind to put a Rotary in yet, but as I said, I wouldn't rule it out. But yeah, in the short term, probably no.
M. Divlug asks, can we get a video on your dad's Buick?
I don't know how to answer that question because my dad doesn't have a Buick. I'm not sure if you're referring to the black Buick that I used to own or my dad's Thunderbird. Dad's got he's going to shoot me because I'll get this wrong. I think it's a 63 Ford Thunderbird. There are plans to do something with that on the channel yet, but we're not exactly sure what. I've got to work out how to kind of work that into a bit of a story and do something with it. We'll probably show some more shots of that. We are going to do another Cars and Coffee video going forward as well. Dad normally takes that to Cars and Coffee as well. So yeah, we'll probably give a bit more of an overview of that car. Maybe even do a bit of a drive video with it at some point. But yeah, more information required, I guess, is the answer to that question. I'm not sure if you're referring to my old Buick or Dad's Thunderbird.
Advanced Footwork asks, what were your 3 favourite Japanese cars growing up and why?
I wasn't really into Japanese cars growing up, I guess. I kind of joined the Japanese scene a bit later on, so the short answer to that is I didn't really have favourite Japanese cars growing up. I was more into English cars, actually. I had a stack of Minis growing up. Plot twist, I actually have a British car coming to the channel soon. In 2023, you'll probably see that. I did buy it a few months ago. It's currently in storage in a state, and we need to go and pick that up at some point and then do some stuff with it. It probably won't be a long-term project either, but it's kind of getting me back into the old British Leyland stuff, which will have rust and bad Lucas electrics, and I'm already thinking this is a bad idea now. But it's going to be fun, and we're going to laugh at it along the way. And we've got to pump the suspension up.
Boring British person. What cars do you have right now?
I get asked this question a lot, and I actually can't answer easily off the top of my head. So let's try and count them out. We've got the Viper, the Sigma, the Falcon, the Century, the Cresta, the Legacy, mystery car, which we haven't revealed yet, other mystery car, which we haven't revealed yet, but we've got a 2J4, other mystery car that's still in Japan, which I don't think we've even talked about yet, which may make it here for 2022. Keeping in mind it's about the 15th of November today in filming time, so I'm not exactly sure what's going to eventuate on camera. We're also waiting on shipping. We're waiting on all sorts of bits and pieces to be able to make a stack of stuff for 2023. So, slight segue. Our filming schedule's actually been thrown upside down because we had planned to bring all of our Drag Week content out right now. So because we don't actually have any of that, because Drag Week didn't happen for us, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. So some of the content's kind of been shuffled around. Some project cars have actually been purchased to try and fill some gaps. And then inversely, shipping's delayed, shipping's gone up. Getting it to state to get stuff, just I'm time poor at the moment. So trying to get all that balance to make everything work. Shout out to Brett actually for storing the miscellaneous project car interstate. He's been a lifesaver, went and bought it and stored it for me. And yeah, he's just a legend all around. So shout out to Brett. I've known him for like 20 years now. So that's pretty wild considering I'm only 35. 34 actually, wow, I'm just upscaling it. Anyway, we're just rambling. Let's go with another question.
Calvin Kwok, 7-second Cresta pass.
Definitely. Since I guess it ran mid to low 8s, it's always been the goal to push it for a 7. There will never, ever, ever be a 6-second Cresta shirt for those that are wondering. I see a lot of comments on videos and stuff. Oh, how long till it sees a 6-second pass? To make a 7-second car run a 6-second pass is not a thing. It's making a car a whole second quicker at that level is a massive undertaking, and I don't think people understand how much faster and how much quicker the car needs to be to physically go from a 7 to a 6-second car. 7 seconds is realistic for the Cresta, but it's never going to be like a 750 car. It's going to run like 790s, maybe 780s. The longer answer to that question is we just need more power. Or a more efficient torque converter. We have actually changed the converter recently, and so far it is untested. The initial data and a lot of the discussions around building that converter have been to make it a bit more efficient in the top end of the track, because we do know that we've got a bit of converter slip on the top end of the track, and that will actually, the more slip you have, the more inefficient it is. Effectively, it's like a slipping clutch. So I think we're at about 8.5% converter slip at the moment. If we see that as low as maybe 3 to 4%, it's effectively using more of the power. To make it consistently run 7s, we're going to need to go another turbo again. Unfortunately, that G45 1500 didn't really yield the results I was hoping for. It's just not big enough of a step from the G45 to get the results we're looking for. Garrett have actually just launched a bigger version of a G45 though, so I won't buy another turbo, but we may actually try and source just the compressor wheel and put that into my G45, because the only difference is that compressor wheel. So yes, another long answer to your question, but yeah, 7s is definitely on the cards.
What is a reliable maximum horsepower figure on a Holden 304 for track use? Adam Blattman asks.
How long's a piece of string? The short answer is I have zero experience with that engine, so I'm not the right person to ask. But there's way too many factors in that question to give you an honest answer. Things like oil system, sump, cooling system, engine management, vehicle weight, all of those things are going to factor into making a reliable engine. Also cam, cylinder heads. There's hundreds and hundreds of variables for that answer. So my honest answer will be to find a competent engine builder that is experienced in that engine and potentially experienced in motorsport and have that conversation with them.
When's the BF Liberty getting worked on the channel, asks Sammy Davey.
It's coming back in 2023 as well. I did plan to have a heap of parts to do some development on that car. Unfortunately, the engine that I was going to purchase turned up with about 200,000 kilometers more than we'd anticipated. So I didn't go ahead and purchase that engine, and that has delayed a lot of things going forward. The plan is basically going to be to revisit that build 10 years on and do it in 2023 Benny style rather than 10 years ago Benny style, because it's got blue silicon and big stuff everywhere. It just needs a redo. Like there's weird hoses and all sorts of junk all over the place. So I think I'll go back or put a GC8 radiator in it as opposed to the aluminium one that's in it now, and just kind of just make it a heaps more neater setup. Also going to do some fabrication on the car as well. It's currently got a non-turbo rad support in it, so we're going to put a turbo rad support in it. We've already got a nose cut for that to donate the lower rad support. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of plans for that car in 2023. That being said, it's actually out of rego at the moment as well, so I need to get it re-registered. But yeah, it's coming back in 2023.
Jimmy Naylor, what's the plan with the Viper?
Drive it. I don't want to do a lot to it. It doesn't actually need it. It definitely doesn't need more power, that's for sure. I would like to get a better or nicer exhaust note out of it. Currently, it runs twin side pipes with no crossover at all, so the exhaust pulsation is very flappy, and it does sound. I don't think the sound does the car justice is the actual answer. Going forward, we'll probably make a new exhaust system, and I'll definitely add a crossover pipe to make the pulses a lot more linear. I'm not going to change things like wheels. I actually really like the stock wheels that are on it. The 3-spoke stuff's pretty cool, and I think it's very era specific. But yeah, just cruise it and enjoy it. It's actually in summer mode now. The roof and the back window are out of it. Weather pending, it'll definitely get a lot of use this summer. This
one's from Gutter to Gutter Podcast, and they ask, when are you going to join Heath on the G2G podcast?
Don't know. The actual answer is they have invited me a couple of times. Schedules just haven't aligned to this point. I'm definitely keen to do it. There's a massive line of legends who have already been on that podcast, and I'd be honoured to be on it in good company. But yeah, just at the moment, timing and schedules are just killing me. We've still got a lot of stuff to do in 2022, even though we've only got about 6 weeks left of 2022. So pencil me in for 2023. I'm keen to do it.
This one's from Southern 75. Why is a Sigma on modified classic plates, not regular historic?
The short answer is because that's the scheme it should be on. There's tons and tons of cars out there that are on HVS that should be on CVS. Those cars are probably going to be the reason if and when the historic system gets withdrawn. So do your due diligence and register your car correctly.
Lifted individual. Aside from a 1 or 2J, what's your favourite Toyota engine and why?
I'm not massively a Toyota engineologist, but I do like the 3S beams that came out in the RS200 Altezza. They're just pretty cool. It's kind of like Toyota's last hurrah on their powered, like high-powered Aspo 4-cylinder. Pretty cool considering that engine started in the 80s and it all made it all the way to about 2004. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see that thing progress. They also had a lot of input from other companies like Yamaha designing the cylinder head. And yeah, there's some pretty interesting technology in that engine considering how old the architecture of that engine dates back to.
SR Woody asks, does YouTube pay your bills?
YouTube doesn't pay my mortgage directly, no, I pay it. There is some revenue involved in YouTube, that's no secret. We also have some fantastic sponsors that help us out. The entirety of my income is not from YouTube, no.
What's some good preventative maintenance on a turbo barra going in a 4-wheel drive, asks Summers 97.
Always do timing chain kit, oil pump gears, head studs, valve springs, and a freshen up before you put it in, because everyone always goes, oh, I'm just going to leave it stock, and then all of a sudden they're running 30-pound upper sand dune, and then all your engines fall apart. I would even, depending on what engine you're starting with, if it's a turbo, non-turbo engine, especially in a high-stress application like a four-wheel drive, I would just go straight for some forged pistons and rods, because it's way cheaper to do it now than get someone have to flat tow you off Fraser Island and then get recovered by Clayton's and pay millions of dollars.
Chris Parrish asks a two-part question. Any collabs in the pipeline and any plans to come to the UK?
Yes, there's a collab in the pipeline, which we're actually going to be shooting in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure. It's not coming out on my channel, so I don't know exactly when it's coming out. No immediate plans to go to the UK, but I would love to get there at some point because it's got a really good car scene. I know a lot of people, both from the drag racing and drifting community over there, so it'd be cool to actually go and catch up with some people. And I've actually got some personal friends over there as well, which I haven't seen for quite a while. Between COVID and both of our schedules, they haven't really lined up. So yeah, it'd be cool to actually catch up with some friends who moved back there a few years ago.
Mr. Steve Cap also has a two-part question.
Buddy Cappy.
Heading to Summer Nats, will the Lexus be skidding again?
Unfortunately, 2023 Summer Nats isn't going to be a thing for BCW. I had planned to go, but we've got some scheduling clashes, and unfortunately Summer Nats this year has had to be binned. Basically, we've done Summer Nats a few years in a row, so we're going to do something a little bit differently this year. I'm actually having a family holiday, so I'm going to take some time off early in the year. Our schedule is going to be very hectic in 2023, so I'm trying to be super mindful of that and spend as much family time as possible because I'm going to be traveling a lot. We've got at least 3 US trips, plus a lot of stuff's going to be happening in Australia as well in 2023 for BCW. So short answer, no, we're not going to be there. The Lexus is running, but it will also not be there. I believe, actually I probably can't say who's going to be there, so I'll leave that to them to announce it.
Just how many cars have you worked on since starting the BCW channel, even unfinished, asks 6A.
On camera, I'd say probably 20, 25 cars. Off camera, there's always something going on here in the background. As much as we're not a retail workshop, there's always someone else's project or someone's here for a bit of help or something. So there's always cars coming and going here. We don't work on retail jobs at all, but yeah, there's always something in the background. Just right of camera now, there's a car that's literally turned up this morning, which we may or may not show you because I'm not sure if it can be on camera or not.
Jackson Saunders, Mazda 323 pre-1990.
I guess that's a question, maybe. I guess that could be a cool Rotary project if it's a rear-wheel drive one. They're expensive too, though. Anything that you can even think about putting a Rotary in, even if it was a piston engine derivative, is not a cheap prospect. And the actual answer is as well, a lot of those cars were worth nothing at one point, so they were abandoned in paddocks or whatnot. So more often than not, they're in bad condition or they've been badly tidied up to resell. I probably wouldn't, purely based on those factors. If I guess going back to the Rotary question as well, if I was going to do something Rotary, I'd pick something a bit more oddball, like an 80s Cosmo or a Luce or something like that, purely because they're just a bit more random and probably suit my style and tastes a bit more. I kind of like weird cars rather than the norm. And there's tons and tons of 323s out there, much like RX2, 3.4s, Capellas, that sort of deal. So I'd probably steer away from those just because they're so done. And I don't really like building Sydney donks. Shout out to Nathan Petter.
Precy 1811, do you have a forever car?
Probably the Cresta. I don't think I would sell that car. Actually, as much as I love that car, I probably wouldn't sell it because it would be potentially be a liability. I wouldn't like to see someone buy that car and crash it, either hurt themselves or someone else. At the end of the day, it's a 1200 horsepower car. So I don't think it would be safe for someone to just buy that. Everything's for sale generally. As much as I'm attached to a lot of my cars, I would still, selling one creates an opportunity to build another one. So there's some cars that have moved on in the background, and there's actually some more questions relating to those, so I won't answer that directly now, but probably the Cresta is the only car I probably will keep forever.
And leading on, what's the plan with the Cresta, asks Chase?
Run a 7, enjoy it, do as much drag and drive stuff as we can. This will most likely, given the circumstances of what's happened to get the car to America this year, this will most likely be the last time it ever leaves the country again. So my plan is to make the most of 2023 with the Cresta and do Sick Week. We've also got another event, Midwest Drags, East Coast Assault, which we're confirmed for both of those events. I'm aiming to do TX2K, but also now looking at scheduling, there's going to be a lot of back and forth between Texas and the East Coast. So we're working out plans for that. The guys at Sick Mag also are doing another event in November, I believe, called Death Week, which is the week after SEMA, and it starts in Vegas. So there's every chance that we'll probably be in Vegas during SEMA next year. Potentially the car will be at SEMA, I can't guarantee that. But it would be really cool to have the Cresta at SEMA before it left the States, because if it's not there next year, it's never going to go there. And same with PRI. I probably wouldn't drag the car up to Indiana purely to take it to PRI, but never say never.
It's Poiter asks, automotive challenges of living rural, any tips or advice in line with that?
Be creative. It's always handy to have old scrap cars that are lying around. Don't throw anything away. Generally, if you're rural, you've got plenty of space, so hoarding generally isn't an issue. Have a welder. I'd recommend a MIG welder at a minimum. Even a gasless one will get you out of trouble. It's not pretty, but I've done some pretty gnarly things with a gasless welder before. Stick welding is generally pretty hard on automotive stuff. But yeah, I think a basic, like I said, even a gasless MIG welder will get you out of trouble. Keep basic stuff like belts, spark plugs. I guess it depends how rural you are. If you're like an hour out of town, you probably don't need to go too crazy with stuff. If you're in the middle of Australia, yeah, you want to carry more and more spares. But yeah, be crafty, be handy, learn some basic skills. Welding, I think, is right up there because that can get you out of a lot of trouble. Anything you break, especially if it's farm vehicles, you don't necessarily have to follow the same repair rules you would on a road car. I've seen some pretty scary repairs, but those vehicles have been in service for years on farms after they've been condemned for road use. I know of a few local farms that have got old Land Cruisers that are more rust than car, but those things still get around the paddock, no worries. You definitely wouldn't drive them on the road, but for low-speed farm use, no worries at all.
How great is the JB Camaro 1982 wheels car of the year? Can you tell us why it's your favourite?
The Camaro is not my favourite, and it was the wheels car of the year, but it's definitely not my favourite. I did toy with building a Camaro, I won't lie. I did have these grand plans of buying a Camaro wagon and then doing a VL Commodore Walkinshaw mock-up. However, Camaros aren't easy to find. There's not a neat Camaro out there that's cheap. Also, the costs involved in doing that project were way more than the car would ever be worth. So that was one of the ones that died on the cutting room floor before we even attempted it. But yeah, I mean, one really cool feature of a Camaro, which I will digress, you can replace a manual clutch kit in a Camaro without pulling the transmission out. So the front wheel drive 5-speed that's in those, you can actually slide the input shaft through the transmission case, pull all of the clutch kit out of the bottom of the bell housing and refit it, including tightening the clutch bolts through the starter motor hole. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, that's all I had to say about Camaros.
B. Brallying asks, how did you get the Cresta engineered?
That was a pretty long and lengthy process. I did discuss a lot of it with an engineer. Obviously that vehicle was built and then engineered retrospectively. It's not the way I would recommend to engineer a car ever. For that reason, we are going to be consulting with an engineer before we build our new car, because there was a lot of things that we had to change in the background to get that car correct. I've never delved into the engineering side of it because in at least New South Wales, a lot of the engineering rules are guidelines. So engineers all have different opinions, and that's why I haven't gone into it, because one engineer will say one thing, another engineer will say a completely different thing. So we never videoed it because people just carry on. And at the end of the day, it's my car and an engineer signed off on it. So that's the end of it as far as I'm concerned. But it has been engineered, and it is possible if you find an engineer who is happy to work with you and is happy to sign it off. So make some phone calls, look around, speak to multiple engineers, because I've had, in many instances, not just this particular car, you'll get 5 different answers from 5 different engineers. So by all means, I'm not saying that every engineer is wrong or every engineer is right, but potentially if the engineer is not willing to work with you, there may be someone else out there that can work with you on a car, or has a different interpretation of the guidelines. So shop around. That's kind of a how long's a piece of string question as well, but there are ways to get things engineered.
Toby Travalos, most frustrating car you've ever owned and car you wish you've never sold?
The stage year actually frustrated me a lot towards the end of it. The process of selling that car was really good. The gentleman who purchased the vehicle basically came down. I discussed what I was unhappy with the car. He had a few things he wanted fixed with it as well. So basically it was about a 2-month process where he paid a deposit on the vehicle, and then I went right through it and repaired a lot of stuff. The most frustrating part of that was actually the clutch. So originally we used a Mantic clutch, and it was never 100% right because we had a flywheel spacer and all sorts of stuff going on. I contacted another company who then custom made a flywheel, who had 2 goes at it. I'll mention actually they missed a crucial part of it and had to redo it. So the billet flywheel actually had a piece welded into it, which I wasn't happy about. And then it turned up and I installed it and the clutch wouldn't release. And I spent about 2 weeks back and forth with them. They said it was an install error. I pulled it apart, and it turned out that the posts to guide the clutch disc, the tolerance was too tight on that. So I machined a little bit off each one of those posts, and then the thing worked flawlessly. Very similar in the way that we repaired the clutch in the Boss Garage as Audi. When I was in Canada with Skid Factory years and years ago. I think that was even before the BCW channel actually started from memory. And it was almost actually frustrating as well that how nice that car actually drove when it was finally 100%. Fixing all those little things made it a much nicer car. And in hindsight, if I had fixed all of those things earlier, I probably wouldn't have sold it. But I don't regret selling it because it's opened opportunities here. Basically put some money in the bank that we put into other projects.
End of page 2.
Oh man, I think there's like 6 pages. We're going to be here for like an hour and a half.
This one's from Stegsy. Did you consider the TR Magna EFI conversion on the Astron 2 engine for the Sigma?
Short answer, no. Technically the engine in the Sigma is not an Astron 2, is an Astron 2.6 litre. So it's a first gen Astron 2.6, so it's from a GE Scorpion. The Magna inlet manifold doesn't actually fit. The cylinder head flange is similar, but it doesn't line up, so all the water jackets are different. And I didn't really want to make that car EFI anyway. It was always a plan to have twin Webers on it, so no, I didn't really ever consider EFI. And if I did do EFI, I probably would have done like the Gen V style throttle bodies, which look like Webers anyway. And I would have used a Haltech, not a standard Magna ECU.
Eon Shock 98 asks, will you ever do a Gen 1 WRX build?
I'd love to do an early GC8, like a 94 RA or an RA replica. Just as usual, everything's so expensive now. So I know I use that excuse a lot, but the fact of the matter is everything's expensive. And building a car, the purchase price of the car is going to be like $20,000 to $30,000 to start the build. I need to find that money from somewhere, and generally I am the one paying for stuff. Like I said, we're very fortunate that we have some fantastic sponsors that support us. However, we're in a factory here, so a lot of people actually think this is my garage. It's not. This is effectively a set, I guess, if you want to put it in production TV terms. But this is the workspace which I normally work in, regardless of whether we're filming or not. And this place, just the rent on this particular shed is nearly $3,000 a month. That doesn't include any outgoings, lights, power, fuel, operational costs. So running BCW is actually a fairly costly exercise. And then obviously we've both got to pay our bills out of the income that we generate as well. So I do a lot of things apart from the BCW you guys see, which there's more questions about that, so we'll touch on that further on in the video.
How's tuning the twin Webers going for you? Ask Guestigram.
Tuning the Webers is an ongoing exercise. I'm very, very inexperienced at it. I've played around with it to a point where the car runs and drives. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It currently has a miss on transient throttle, which I believe is a lean miss. Isaac, which you guys probably haven't seen on our channel yet. Isaac's been working on MCM channel for a little while. He's actually going to come down potentially as soon as this weekend, and we're going to do a day of tuning the Webers. He's a bit of a wizard with that sort of deal. He comes from Volkswagen land, so he's very versed at synchronizing twin carby setups. So yeah, with Isaac's help and knowledge, we'll hopefully have that thing pretty well dialed, maybe as early as this weekend in real time. We will most definitely be filming that, so you guys will be able to see what we've done, how we've done it, and why we've done it. And hopefully we have all of the bits to actually make it work 100% on the day. I've got some extra jets, so if we need to drill stuff out further, we can. But I don't have the undrill to put material back into the jets.
What's next for the Century? Asks Bednell92.
The Century will sooner or later get a new airbag system. The factory air suspension system, while it's nice in a factory car, if you run that at less than factory height, the ride is pretty badly compromised, and also it takes a long time to get it from low to high. I've never had a properly airbagged car in my life, and I've always had that as a bit of a bucket list thing. So we do have an Airflex kit there to put in the car. The guys from Airflex are probably going to come down and help us install it, because that's going to be a pretty big undertaking in the Century, because you've got to pull the back seat out and there's a lot of lines and stuff to run. The one slightly different thing we're going to do, rather than use typical push lock style air hose, we're actually going to use Raceworks AN line to plumb the whole system. So that'll be something a little bit different, a little bit cool, and hopefully that'll make it way more durable for years to come. Because it is a family cruiser, we do take it out during the week and on weekends sometimes. So I don't want to be stuck in the middle of nowhere with my family with a car like this. Oh, that hurt my back. Oh, I woke up wrong. Now I'm in pain because I'm old.
You're not that old.
I feel like 70.
31 gun. Why does the Sigma have orange wheels?
Why does the Sigma have orange wheels, Mark? The wheels are getting repaired on the Sigma. I hit a gutter, and they're not structurally damaged, but they're gutter rashed, so it made me sad. Also, Mark has a cool polishing machine, which he's going to let me use and polish the lips. So they're going to be ceramic polished and then powder coated. So for years to come, they'll be nice and durable and shiny for the next owner. Because sooner or later, I'm going to sell the Sigma. As much as I love that car, it's not a forever car. It's been a project on the channel for probably about 2 years now, I guess. It's been on and off the channel for about 2 years. It's kind of finished. There's not a lot left to do to it. One of the major things is trim. I am getting to get it professionally trimmed by a friend locally. I may go and be her apprentice for the day, because I actually was an apprentice motor trimmer, but I decided to get out and go back to school. I was probably a little bit young, leaving the school system, entering the industry. I felt I wasn't old enough to stay there, so I actually started the apprenticeship at the end of year 10, which I was 15. And then over the school holidays worked there, and decided over that point that it probably wasn't for me. Went back to school and did year 11 and 12, and then started a mechanical apprenticeship instead. But these are all segues and completely random chats.
Supernova92, how's internet fame treating you? Us fans annoying you in the street yet?
I guess that's a weird question, because I don't consider myself famous. I like when people come and say hi or ask questions about the channel or the project cars, because people are interested in what we're doing. Typically, no, I don't feel like anyone annoys me. Sometimes it's a little bit hard if I'm out with my family or in a social setting that's not a car thing. There's been a few weird interactions like at restaurants and stuff over the years, which kind of make it a little bit difficult when you're not in the automotive scene. If I'm at a car show or something, by all means, come up and have a chat. Even when we're out, whatever, that's cool. But yeah, sometimes people kind of get a little bit weird, and it can be awkward sometimes if you're out in a social setting that, especially when the other people in the setting don't understand necessarily what I do day to day.
Zaki B, 25. When are you doing a collab with MCM and Skid Factory next?
There's one in the works. It's going to be coming out next year, I believe. So I don't want to talk about what it is because it's going to be on the, whose channel will be on? It won't be on my channel. I'll leave it at that. But yes, something is in the works, and it's going to be shot actually in the next few weeks in real time. But I don't know when that's going to come out, and it's not for me to say what it is or when or where it's going. So yes, in short, there is a project coming. But it's not going to be on the BCW channel.
Did you have aspirations on doing what you've done with the Cresta when it was first purchased? Were you interested in the Cresta prior to the purchase?
I've kind of always liked the X platform, as in Cresta, Crescita, Mark II, Chaser, that family of cars. I didn't specifically love the 70 series X cars, but the Cresta was actually supposed to be cheap transport, and then we were going to get rid of it when we were shooting Chasing Midnight, I think it was, with MCM in Japan. I think that was about 2015 we were over there shooting that. Basically, the cost of a hire car was more than what we paid for that car, and the plan was to just put it back through the auctions when we were done and recoup our money. But the car was actually too good. It was super neat, and then we decided to bring it back to Australia. I've kind of told this story a few times. We didn't really know what to do with it at the time or what engine to put in it. It sat in storage for about 2 years up at ours, I think. Then it came down, and the Transformers project came up on MCM. So then that build progressed on the MCM channel, and at that point they owned the car. I did have aspirations of doing Drag Week before even the Transformers project. So there was definitely something in the background we talked about doing. At the time, we couldn't get a budget to ship the car to America because even at that point, shipping wasn't cheap. In hindsight now, it was very cheap compared to what we've paid this year. But yeah, shipping costs have always been pretty wild. The short answer is no. At the time, the car was not supposed to be what it became.
Thanks to Damo Mac 88 for that. Bradford AU asks, how many AUs have you owned, and what's the best and worst part about them?
I think I've had 3 AU Falcons. They've all been XR8s, 2 XR8 Utes and 1 XR8 sedan. 2 of them I bought purely to part out. I had a BA XR6 Turbo, which I launched the engine on, and on Marketplace I literally found an AU XR8 Ute automatic that already had a tow bar locally. So it basically got me out of a pinch cheaper than putting an engine in that BA XR6 Turbo. I did later repair that car, but always went back to the AU. That ute was solid. It was such a good ute for what it was. They're pretty reliable. They're easy to work on. The AU2 and 3 share a lot of suspension and brake components with, or geometry, I should say, with BF all the way up to FG in some instances. So they're easy to upgrade. Brakes, like you can put FG turbo calipers and discs all around on an AU ute, so the braking can be made much better. What I like about them is the parts compatibility. Also, were a really cheap way, in the way we've harvested the 2J out of that GS300, they were a really cheap way to get a fairly good engine in a 5-litre roller cam Windsor. The BTR transmission behind them was probably not the greatest. Much like the T5 in the manual configuration, they weren't great. A few downfalls of the AU, they rust so badly, it's ridiculous. Both the parts cars that I parted out both had very bad rust. And even today, I would happily have parted those cars out. There's a few cars in hindsight that I shouldn't have stripped because they were actually pretty good cars. Both of those AUs were definitely not in that category. The ute had such bad rust, the bottom half of the cab behind the doors was missing. The other issue with AUs, specifically manual, is the firewall cracks where the clutch cable is. When Ford went to the BA, they went to a hydraulic clutch, so that's a much better system in my opinion. But yeah, there's not a lot of downfalls to AUs. The typical Falcon things, the diffs always whine, but yeah, they're a pretty solid car.
910 Wagon asks, what happened to the R32? What's your daily and how did you go about becoming so successful and living the dream?
What a question, living the dream. In short, I've sold the GTR. I just didn't love it. That's the true honest answer, is I didn't love it. A friend of mine actually contacted me and made an offer on it. It was never publicly listed. He knew I had the car, made an offer on it, and now it's his. That's probably why you guys haven't seen it for a while. I haven't mentioned it purely because I didn't really have a need to or a way to get the message across. He's in love with it. It was actually here last Saturday. We were doing a bit of work on it, so it probably will pop up again sooner or later. It's still in the extended family. So yeah, it got sold. What's the next part of the question?
What's your daily?
Daily is my FG Falcon Ute, which is about to be replaced with an all-new dual cab, which we will discuss at length on the channel. I really actually want to do a video on how I came to the conclusion of the vehicle that I bought, because I feel like the dual cab segment is extremely flooded in Australia, and you can literally spend anything from $37,000 on a Chinese dual cab to $200,000 on an F250 or a Silverado or a Ram. So I feel like that's a pretty decent topic to cover, especially if you're looking to buy a Ute in 2022 or 2023, depending on when the video comes out, which will probably be 2023 actually. How did I become so successful and live the dream? The answer is hard work. I've spent 7 years building BCW from nothing. There's many weeks where I'll go 100 plus hours working, and I guess people see the dream and people see the Instagram version of my life. It's not, it's the iceberg. You see the nice shiny little bit that sticks out of the water, but you don't see all of what's under the water, the hard work and the hours of effort and struggle and sacrifice by both me and my family. They definitely miss out a lot when I'm here, or on tour, going internationally, going interstate. Prime example, last week I spent 20 hours in a car driving between here and Melbourne and back in a day just so I could get some parts to come back here. So yeah, we do a lot of stuff outside of making videos. I buy and sell a lot of stuff. I reckon I'm probably on Marketplace 3 or 4 hours a day, buying and selling. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background to make this work. I could have comfortably stayed in a 40-hour-a-week job, but the lifestyle that this affords me, I definitely have better opportunities now to be able to travel, to be able to do the builds, to be able to do things like drag week. There's no way I could sustain any of that in a full-time job. There's no way I could get the leave. There's no way an employer would let you have the time off that I would need to do all of those things. Yeah, it's a very complex question, a very complex answer, but the crux of it is hard work and sacrifice. People see Adam LZ, Cletus, 1320, a lot of these guys that are pumping it pretty hard in the States. Luke Fink as well, shout out to Luke, he's got a really good channel. I watch Luke a lot. A lot of these guys are all seen to be living the dream, and I include myself in that. MCM, Skid Factory, all of these guys we're all self-made. None of us really have fallen into millions of dollars by taking a phone call, winning the lottery. We've all come from arguably not a lot of money. A lot of people have made sacrifices and a lot of hard work. Yeah, there's been support from family, and I did get an inheritance years ago when one of my family members passed away. I'd much prefer to have that family member than the money, for the record, but it was a fantastic leg up, and it allowed me to start BCW. However, none of that money exists today, so all of this has been from just constant hard work and hustle. That's a very long answer to that question, but I do believe that question deserves the time to be answered correctly.
When and how much will you be advertising the Sigma for? Asks Rattlejack.
Bit of a random question. The Sigma will be advertised when it's finished. I don't want to sell it unless it's complete. The wheels are currently getting fixed up and the trim will be done sooner or later. I anticipate probably first quarter of 2023 that'll go up for sale, if it even gets advertised publicly. Historically, a lot of our stuff gets sold by people contacting us and making offers privately. It's a very hard car to price because there's not a lot of good Sigmas out there as far as modifications go and bodywork quality. The Sigma is quite a good car as far as rust goes for Sigmas because they're very bad to rust. It's hard to put a price on because there's nothing to really compare it against. If it was a Datsun or a Corolla, it'd be easy to price, but I don't know. I feel like mid-20s is probably reasonable, but I think a lot of people will scoff at that. But when you look at what is in that car and what's been done to it and the cost of doing all of those tasks, I think mid-20s is probably a pretty reasonable price.
Fozen2, do you do normal service work?
No, we're not a retail shop, so we don't do any service work at all. When I say we don't do any, we do a little bit of stuff for friends and family, but I don't do any retail service work, no.
LZY25T asks, what's the plan with the rest of the GS300?
So the rest of the GS300 is going to go to a friend of mine. He has aspirations to turn it into a drift car. Who knows if that'll ever happen, but at least he can deal with it and it won't get scrapped, at least immediately.
Can you please make a video of each of your current projects and an update on each? Asks Fletcher.
Now that I know that at least one person will watch it, we will probably make that video. It has been actually an idea of mine for a while to make something similar to that and almost do potentially a monthly recap in real time of where the projects are. Some cars obviously are a lot slower moving than others. This thing particularly doesn't really get a lot of stuff done to it. So yeah, sometimes there won't be any updates. I suppose that could potentially be a good time to talk about if we sell something or buy something. So yeah, that potentially we could look at doing something like that monthly maybe. But yeah, we'll do something like that, yes.
Theo M109R. Tell us about the mechanical side of BCW. What else do you do?
So the mechanical side of BCW is pretty much non-existent. We don't do retail work, as I've already mentioned a few times. I have developed and made some parts which we sell via the BCW website, including our Barra power steering, delete and tensioner assembly. I also do build coilovers for a few different cars, S12 Gazelle, R31, a few different Datsuns like 910 Bluebird. We also do the Sigma stuff. I've done KE30 Corolla before as well. So yeah, every now and then I'll build some coilovers. I reckon probably do 10 sets a year. We don't do a lot of them, but yeah, we do that as well on the side. I was doing some contract fabrication work for a company for a while. That dried up a while ago and they've now moved on to another fabricator. But yeah, every now and then we get random jobs that'll pop up, little repair stuff. There's other guys even in our complex that we do little jobs for here and there. So yeah, it's just, I think the key to running a business in 2022 is to be flexible and diverse. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We also obviously sell a lot of stuff from Japan. We import parts and wheels from Japan. So yeah, there's always stuff going up on BCW, the Facebook and Instagram pages of wheels for sale or other random bits and pieces. Sometimes we have bumper bars for Lexuses, and typically I import parts for cars that we either use or build here. But a lot of the stuff will get sold rather than be used.
Being the Cresta has an Aussie engine, will the 2JZ be going into something Aussie built? Asks XBP.
No, the 2J will not be going into an Australian built car. If you want to see a 2J in an Aussie built car, check out Skid Factory's build on Kevin. It's a I believe Kevin is a VR or a VS Commodore. Someone will confirm in the comments. That is going to be an 8-second 2J powered Commodore. We are definitely putting ours in a Japanese car. It's a Japanese delivered. I would argue that it's a JDM only platform, but it was available in limited. I believe it was sold in limited markets internationally as well. We definitely didn't get them here, but yeah, it's going to be revealed pretty soon. I'm literally waiting on it to be complied and registered, and then we'll start the build process because it's easier to get it complied now while it's standard and then modify it and engineer it later. But yes, it's definitely going to be a Japanese car.
Well, cheapest way to get WRX4 and 2 crotch calipers.
just go to a wreckers. There's not a lot of easy ways to get those without just buying it from a wreckers. Sometimes they pop up on Marketplace if someone's put a Brembo conversion on their WRX, but depending on what you're putting them on, you actually need the rear hubs from the same GD WRX anyway, or dog bone adapters, but I would recommend to use the factory hubs over dog bone adapters.
Dane Fredrickson, what are the 5 most wacky/useful workshop tools for under $20?
On the spot, I don't have a quick answer for that, but I want to do a bit more content about picking some tools and potentially some tools that'll help you in the shop that you may not think to purchase. So we are going to do a video specifically on that topic. I probably won't limit it to $20 because it's going to make that pretty hard to make. I think a reasonable cost is probably more like $100. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of equipment out there that people wouldn't necessarily think to buy or may not even be on their radar, be it that it's from a specialty tool store or maybe online available. But yeah, we definitely will cover something a little bit like that in more detail in the future.
Luca Runo asks, when are you building a variety bash car?
To be blunt, I probably wouldn't do it purely because I don't support large charities. I don't like the way they handle money. We normally do more charity work on a local level. In the past, we've supported local people that required new or replacement vehicles after bushfires. We've also donated locally to money locally to people who need it directly. There's no administration fees or anything like that. So, not that I'm saying you shouldn't support large charities, it's just not for me. I like to make sure that as much of that money as possible goes to the people that need it directly. We basically, a few mates and I normally get together once a year and we'll do something for local people. This year's no different. We've got something on the go at the moment, but we typically don't actually publicise that.
Kian asks, will I see you at any drag challenge dates early next year?
Kian. Maybe. I don't know. I originally actually committed to working for Street Machine at Drag Challenge this year. Unfortunately, because of extreme weather events which are currently pumping most of Australia, at least the East Coast, Drag Challenge, the 5-day Drag Challenge event, which is typically in Victoria in November, was postponed this year. I believe it's the end of January this year. Those dates are very close to when we're going to go to the US for Sick Week, so I don't know if I'll make it down there purely because I'll be preparing for Sick Week, and being that I'm going to go to the US for nearly a month, I don't know if I'll have the time to be away from home for another week. I'd love to be there, but yeah, the scheduling may not work for us.
What/who had the biggest impact on you becoming a mechanic/car enthusiast?
My family, both my dad and my grandfather, have always had something to tinker around with. When I was and my other grandfather who passed away, actually, we've all kind of always tinkered with stuff. When I was pretty young, my mother's father always was playing around with more so lawnmowers and small engines, but the first engine I ever repaired and got running again was with him, was an old Victor lawnmower. I think I was about 12 or 13 at the time, maybe even younger than that actually. We were just tinkering around with that and got it running. Just kind of, my other grandfather had a lot more sort of vintage cars, and he was more of a restorer, but still built some modified stuff as well. He had a HQ Ute that had a small block Chev in it, and Dad had a Tirana when I was a kid. My great uncle's also got a 1946 Mercury 4-door, which I took to my Year 12 school formal, so that's pretty cool. All of my extended family have always had some sort of older car, either as a project or even as a daily. My mother's father had a XA, B or C Ute. I can't remember which it was because I was about 7 when they got rid of that. There was always older cars in our family.
That was from Andrew, who also asks, what's your dream car if money was no object?
If money was no object, a Ferrari F40, purely because the engineering in those things is fantastic. It's kind of like one of these on steroids. They're such an analog car, they're just such an iconic vehicle, and I've always had an appreciation for them. I'm not really a supercar type of person, but those things are just pretty crazy.
And last page.
Oh, we're on the home stretch.
Jimmy P asks, hey Benny, can you start a podcast? It'd be killer, I reckon.
I don't know if I have the time. That's the actual honest answer. Being that I can't even get on one episode of Gutter to Gutter, I don't know if I've got the time to put together and produce and distribute a podcast. Maybe one day, but yeah, no immediate plans. Gian wouldn't have the time for it either.
Corey M. Hey mate, quick question. Do you miss working on Subarus? Ha ha.
Some days, they're actually a pretty easy car to work on. I think it's a bit of a myth that they're a hard car to work on and service. The timing belt's easily accessible. You can replace an alternator in 5 minutes. Starter motor's much the same. Transmissions come out easily. There's not a lot of hard jobs on a Subaru. Electrical is a bit of a mission on them if you're doing an engine conversion, because the wiring loom is a uni loom, so there's no separate engine harness. Aircon and behind the dash stuff is not super fun, but that's probably one of the only jobs that I don't really care for on a Subaru is the dash stuff. That being said, I've had many dashes out of Subarus over the years doing engine swaps because, like I said, they've got a uni loom. Miss is probably the wrong term, but I do enjoy working on Subarus, and we're actually going to be pulling the engine out of Gian's Impreza sooner or later because, no surprise, it has a head gasket leaking.
Ethel asks, can I drive some of your stuff?
No.
Sean S.
Shout out to Ethel.
How do you maintain a good work-life balance?
I don't know. Let me know when you find out and we'll both do it. Yeah, it's being self-employed, it's a struggle. I use the iceberg metaphor a lot. People see all the cool shiny stuff at the top but don't realize what's going on in the background. Yeah, I've got a family, I've got 2 kids. I don't really talk about that a lot, but yeah, I've got 2 kids, so it's hard to find a balance. I've actually taken up golf as a bit of an escape or a release from the automotive scene in general. There's not a lot of crossover, so for me that's been a bit of a release, and my eldest daughter's actually playing golf as well, so that's cool for us to go and spend some time together. So it allows me to do what I like to do, but it also allows us to spend some time together. So yeah, potentially sometimes you've just got to take a step back. I've already mentioned today, sometimes I'll do 100 hours in a week here. So yeah, you've got to just sometimes step back because it's not healthy. You do experience burnout, depression, self-doubt. All of these sort of things go on daily. Sometimes I've felt like every day is just the world trying to get me a different way. It's definitely not what you see on the internet. No one's life is. I've actually also pulled away from social media a little bit. Some of you guys may have noticed that I'm not as active on Instagram and Facebook at the moment. So that's more just trying to find the balance as well. Also, got to be conscious, obviously we've got commercial agreements, so I do need to be active online, but you do need to keep in mind that you got to live in the moment. I've stopped actually using my phone as much, taking photos and videoing stuff in my own life. I'm just doing the things, which sometimes can be hard because you go, I want to look back on that later, but you've always got the memories. So yeah, I don't always go nuts and take 700 photos. Even day to day, I'll go, oh, how many photos does it take today? You might have a look and there's 2 or 3, whereas 12 months ago, there'd be 20 or 30 photos. So yeah, just do your thing. It is hard to find a balance, and especially if you are in a self-employed situation, you basically go from working 40 hours a week to 24/7. You've always got something on your mind. There's always something going on. Like we've had issues with securing a lease for this shop, so we've only just got that after 13 months of requests. There's been a lot of stress with external stuff that probably does come across on camera sometimes. I'd imagine some of you guys are probably looking and going, oh, there's something going on, or Benny's a bit weird today or whatever. But yeah, there's no easy, I wish there was an easy answer for that question, but there isn't one.
Sean S. also says, you do so much for the community and always have time for a good round of golf. Hats off to you for your commitment and work ethic. Adam G. Hey Benny, we've seen you do mechanical and wiring. Next step, paint?
We are going to paint some cars next year. It won't be pretty. I actually have a inflatable spray booth around the back from a company called Vivor. They sent that to us a little while ago. We had planned to use it in the back half of this year, but I still want to give the paint the best chance it's got. And because the weather's been so horrendous, the conditions for painting, even though it's inside a booth, haven't been great. So we're waiting for better weather. The temperature here, even today, it's like I said, it's middle of November, and it's probably lucky if it's 15 degrees today. So it's abnormally cold for this time of year. So yeah, painting is definitely on the cards. Potentially I can wrangle Jeff in because he's a bit of a gun with painting. But yeah, well, I don't even know what method we'll use. We may even use pressure pack because the cars we're going to paint are both drift cars, and anything we do will make them look better than what they currently look like. But yes, keen to do paint and panel, but also very conscious of my limits and don't want to ruin nice cars by doing the wrong thing. I would never paint this car, let's put it that way.
Maddie P. Mr. Neil, your campaign seems to have the momentum of a runaway train. Why are you so popular?
I don't really know how to answer that question. I appreciate that you think that's what we look like. I don't feel like we have that much momentum. I feel like we've got a pretty loyal fan base, but I don't feel like we're growing at a runaway train pace. I feel like I don't like popular as a word, but I feel like people relate to us or me because I'm honest, and I pretty much show what's going on. We try not to sugarcoat it. We just roll with the punches. Like in a recent episode, the transmission yoke was wrong. You guys still saw that. Potentially other channels would cut that out, or potentially other channels would talk about it for 25 minutes. So yeah, we try and keep it relevant, keep a pretty nice pace. Don't generally smash out videos just to put a video up. Always try and show what's going on. I guess in some aspects, there's probably some levels of aspiration. We are, for want of a better term, living the dream. But as I've already touched on, it's the old iceberg thing. You see the nice shiny bit sticking out of the water. I'm just a normal dude. I'm not jumping out of helicopters and backflipping motorbikes, but we're having fun. We're having a good time.
Hey Benny, long time watcher. What's the next upgrade planned for the Cresta? Asks Matthew P.
The next upgrade for the Cresta is already fitted but currently untested. We've gone to a Circle D converter, so that is a sort of next-gen tech converter. It's got an aerofoil bladed stator in it as opposed to a flat-bladed stator. It should, in theory, make it tighter in the top end of the track. So potentially we'll see a 7-second pass off the back of that converter.
Sam B. Would love a link to the muffler you used on the Sigma.
So would I. That muffler I haven't been able to find in Japan for about 1.5 years. I actually purchased that about 2 years ago. I would love to buy more of those and bring them in and resell them. Unfortunately, whoever was making those doesn't seem to be making them at the moment, but I do look for them every couple of weeks. So if I do happen to find a supplier of them, I'll bring them in and start to resell them through BCW anyway. Whatever
happened to your SVX, asks Tim.
My SVX is currently in Nowra. I think I sold it to a bloke in Queensland, and then he sold it to a guy I know in Nowra. Dan, who currently owns it's actually midway through restoring it, so it's been completely repainted. It's a much neater car now than it was when I had it. Yeah, it's getting tidied up. My dad actually has an SVX too, which I don't think we've ever seen on the channel, so it's going to pop up sooner or later as well. It's in pretty good condition. I had that repainted for his 50th birthday, and then unfortunately it did cop some hail damage after that. So we're going to get some paintless dent done on that. It does need a replacement windscreen, which is currently proving to be the hardest issue, because although you can buy the windscreen, you can't buy the rubber mold that goes around the edge of it. But I digress. It's currently living in Nowra.
Adam E. Why did you switch from Hughes to Circle D converters?
I suppose on the topic of what I just touched on, first and foremost, Pete Nichols is a personal friend of mine, and he used to work at Hughes. He left Hughes and went to Circle D, so I followed Pete because he's a legend. Pete gives us 100% support and help, and his knowledge, in my opinion, is unmatched. Pete's a legend, and he works for Circle D, so we've gone to Circle D. That being said, we still use Hughes for our transmissions, so we haven't left Hughes in its entirety. They do our transmission in the Cresta, our spare transmission, and hopefully going forward we'll get a transmission via Hughes for our 2J powered miscellaneous car.
Final question from Steve J. When are you coming back to the US?
I am actually coming to the US. I kind of already touched on it. I'll be in America in December. So we're going to be at PRI. I'm actually going to be trying to make a ton of content in the States because we don't have as I've already mentioned, we haven't had our US component for the year. So we're going to be at PRI. We're going to be hanging out with Golbies. Also, I think the guys from Kelford are going to be there. So we're going to try and have a bit of a chat about our 2J while we're over there. And then we're actually going to be going into Houston as well, and we're going to visit Circle D before we come back home. So yeah, there's going to be tons of content. We'll probably try and do at least one meetup, maybe two meetups while we're over there. So yeah, it's definitely on the cards. We're going to be over there. Flights are booked, and flights were so expensive, it's ridiculous. Just my flight from Australia to the US and back was over $6,000. Admittedly, I did leave it till the last minute because I didn't want to book anything until the cars, both the cars being the Cresta and the Mustang, were in storage. They are currently now safe in storage. So now that that's all been put in place, I can go over. I want to go over and basically get both of the cars teched, so they have current NHRA tech. Both cars were previously teched, but that tech's expired because you've got to redo it every 2 years. The Cresta was done in 2018 and the Mustang was done in 2019. So both of those have now well lapsed. So yeah, I want to get all of that ironed out so that when we get over to the States in February for Sick Week, we more or less turn up, take the cars and go and run Sick Week. Also want to go through all of our spares that we've sent over and make sure nothing's damaged or broken or missing. The crates that we sent everything over are still sealed, so there should be no issue with anything being stolen or damaged, but I do need to check all of that out, and I don't want to have any surprises going over in February because a lot of that stuff's going to be hard to come by at short notice, especially Barra-specific stuff. So yes, we will be over in December. Well, this episode's been quite the ride, and I'm going to anticipate pretty long. Special shout out to Gian for reading out all the names. Yeah, also massive thanks to you guys for your continued support. Thanks to everyone who asked a question. There were a lot of questions that I kind of put together, so not everyone's name was mentioned, but yeah, a lot of the same kind of themes popped up, so I tried to answer all of the questions as best I could without rereading and answering the same question 4 times. Yeah, we're definitely moving on for 2023. Plenty in the can for pumping out. Like I mentioned, we're going to be up in America in December, so we're going to aim to do some meets. This video will most likely have already come out by the time I'm in the States. If not, we'll post it on the internet instead. But yeah, we're definitely looking forward to a lot of stuff in 2023. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.